Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. And you know what? We got a great show tonight. We are talking to Camille James Harman. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you are an award-winning actress. You are an experiencer. You just have so much going on here. We're going to let you go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Why don't we start from the beginning?
Yeah.
Well, beginning, I'll do the short version of the beginning.
Right.
I'm originally from Louisiana. That's where I grew up and went to college and grad school. And I was an actress when this all began in 1995. I was living in New Orleans, and my boyfriend and I were both actors, and we had just done this amazing performance of Richard III outdoors. And he was Richard and I was Lady Anne, and we felt like we were hot stuff, and we were going to move to LA. So I had my master's degree, my SAG card, all these credits and everything. And we got in the U-Haul, took our dog and moved to LA. So, but before I left town, I had bought a Whitley Strieber book in August. We left town in September. And it was Breakthrough, the silver and blue one that he wrote later on, not the first one, Communion.
Communion. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I had never read Communion, but I'd seen the movie. And I just thought, oh my God, this guy is still writing about aliens. I wonder what he thinks now. I bought the book. I felt compelled to buy the book, actually. You know,
were you interested in aliens at all?
No, not at all. Not
so
at all.
That didn't. Well, I guess maybe not, but it didn't come off as like, you know, why am I interested in this all of a sudden? You know.
The only thing at the time I could piece together was that I had seen Communion because I had a crush on Christopher Walken, and I saw all the Christopher Walken movies. But I really had no interest in this subject. But boy, when I read that book, I became massively interested. It just took me over. Mm-hmm. So this all happened right before we moved in September. So I had this book fresh in my mind, and we moved to LA, and we had everything going for us. We had our careers all set up. We had this really cool rental house in Silver Lake on a big hill with a view, and I had a day job and an agent, and I was like, yeah, we're going to be stars, you know. That was my plan. And but I do remember when we rented that house, seeing the view with the landlord in the living room and saying, this is the perfect house to look for UFOs. And little did I know it was all going to happen. So shortly after that time, I became very anxious and unnerved, and I had all these weird physical things come up in my body, like pregnancy symptoms, just sore breasts and missing menstrual cycle for months and months. And I was on the pill at the time, and usually if I was ever late like that, I would just go to the Walgreens and get a test and be done with it and find out, right? And I'd never been pregnant before. And so I don't know why I delayed getting a test, but I kept delaying it. It was really weird. It was not normal for me. And I hate starting off my story with such a gross fact, but that was like circumstantial evidence for what happened. One day in December, Eric and I were walking the dog, and it was daytime, and our dog was barking at a squirrel that had run up a tree, and there were all these squirrels up in this palm tree, and my dog was just going nuts, and we thought it was so funny, and we were looking up at the palm tree, and then we saw this black thing in the sky that was above the palm tree, way, way above the palm tree. But it was hard to make out the form. It was so high. But I want to say it was triangular. I'm not really sure, though. But it was black. And it had a kind of a shimmer around it, like an interface,
Right. Maybe indicative of...
I've read about like plasma fields around.
And field propulsion, yeah. Normally will have.
Something wiggly. So we looked at it, and it was stationary. And my boyfriend was teasing me. He was like, "You and your UFO books," and I looked at him. I said, "What if it is a UFO?" Like, dude. And then we looked back up, and it was gone. And then I was really excited because we were on this hill with this huge view, and it was nowhere. Like, it did not go anywhere. In that second or two, we looked at each other. So that was very odd. And I said, "Okay, take the leash. I'm going home. I'm going to report a UFO." And I ran home. And they had a phone number in the phone book back then. They had like a UFO hotline in the I think it was the white pages.
Really?
Maybe I think it was the white pages. And I called, and it was MUFON. They had put that number in there. And I told the guy, Bill, I said, "Hey, I just saw this UFO over Silver Lake. What do I do?" And I found out later he never did an official report. So I didn't actually report that one properly. But I did... he did tell me they had meetings, so I started going to the meetings that next month. But before that, still in December, like right at the same time, I had this night when I was awakened with sleep paralysis. And I had that before in my life, occasionally. But this time I had it. Eric was in the other room watching a David Lynch movie. How appropriate. And I was sleeping alone, and I woke up paralyzed, and I couldn't move, and I heard this voice say my name in my left ear, like an electronic sounding computerized voice, just said Camille. And I was so freaked out because at the same time I heard the voice, I was shown a flash of an image of a gun pointed at my face, and I was, okay, what is happening? And I couldn't move, and I couldn't scream, and it was terrifying. And eventually I came out of it, and later in the night when Eric was sleeping with me in the same bed, it happened again, but I didn't have the visuals that time. I just had the paralysis, and I came out of it, and I was crying, and he was comforting. He heard me moaning when I came out of it. So that was a very weird night. I went to a MUFON meeting shortly after that, and I met with, actually it was a Kim Carlsberg meeting about her experiences and her book, Beyond My Wildest Dreams. And it was about abduction. And I just knew I was one of those people. I don't know how I knew, but I was like shaking and trembling. And then I got up, and I was looking at her book on the back table, and she had a checklist in there, and I'm going through it, and I'm like, oh my God, I have like 85% of the things on this list. And I met Barbara Lamb, who's a regressionist. And I said, "Nice to meet you. I want to schedule an appointment with you because I want to target this night in December when I had this weird event and see if there's more to it." So we did that.
Well, before we go to the regression,
okay.
Let's just linger a little bit on these initial experiences, and then we'll move into the regression experiences. I just want to point out a few things just of interest. So first of all, of course, the fact that you were led to the book starting out, there's definitely something with that. And I think you're aware of that now, I'm sure, or probably early on, So there's already some kind of guidance or something, happening that's priming you, it seems like, to uncover what's going on here. And the book sort of preceded, maybe sort of, it seems like this is a kind of regular pattern with a lot of abductions. There's an event that happens, which they have this dawning awareness of ET and maybe abductees, or they get some sort of framework from which they're able to kind of then discern, the nature of their experiences. And then you had an unusual thing happen when you felt the pregnancy symptoms and you didn't get the test.
Yeah.
And you said that you would have always, in that kind of circumstance, would have gotten the test and would have, found out if you were pregnant. But for some reason on this occasion, you didn't. And so I'm trying to piece together, and, we'll get into this more, later on, what that guidance is exactly.
I believe it's your soul. I believe it's your soul shifting gears and sending you into a new period in your life. I mean, later on, I ended up marrying an astrologer. Okay. My husband is a famous astrologer, Jeff Harman, and he's amazing. And when he first checked out my chart, he said I had all this happen in late 1995, by the way. That's when it was. When I had a Saturn return, I had Saturn in my 12th house, and I had progressed moon in my 12th house. So both of those, the moon is emotion and the Saturn is structure. And the 12th house is the unconscious and the hidden. Okay. And so it was time for my hidden world, my hidden life to come out and be known there's a restructuring of the secret in my life. It's not a secret anymore. It's like coming out. So that made sense to me. So something like that. It was time. It was a timing. It was like a divine timing for me to wake up to this, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. To me, those initial things, what led you to the book and so on, seems like, like spiritual guidance,
Right.
like your higher self sort of leading you to uncover this experience. Because it's with an abductee, if you have a lot of repressed memories, that trauma, that you have that's compartmentalized down in there can really inhibit growth, and can create a problem for you that you kind of got to work through in order to advance, I think. It seems like, and there normally is a real kind of expansion of consciousness that takes place afterward. But the thing with the not getting the pregnancy test, I'm not so sure if that is exactly the same type of impulse that what I want to just look at, is points in time where there might be some indications of manipulation. Maybe not. It doesn't necessarily have to be malevolent manipulation or some kind of blocking or interference of your normal behavior and what you would normally do in circumstances.
I agree.
Yeah. Because that ostensibly, would have interfered with potentially, as we're going to find out, a possible breeding program,
Right.
event or circumstance. So, and then the black triangle, or you don't know if it was a black triangle, but you think it may have been, and it was in fact black.
It was
right?
black with that
Like
white
black
shimmer.
mat. So that could potentially be my labs.
I know, and I have a MyLab memory that I'll explain later. Yeah, so that's what the most frustrating thing about this whole phenomenon is trusting your own perception and always having these issues of trust and not knowing, is this, are you a good witch? Are you a bad witch? Are you not a witch at all? What are you? And the way the mind races, trying to fill in the gaps and figure out why me, and all of that. We'll get into that. That's definitely a huge part of it.
Right. So yeah, that's a possible indicator. Yeah, black craft. I don't think that ordinarily ETs ride around in black crafts. I think that's normally black ops that.
And I don't know. I don't know if that craft is the one that was related to my abduction.
No, yeah,
it was around the same time, but I can't say it was definitely the link.
Right. And that would also be, if you have future regressions, that would also be another point of interest, I think, to be regressed to, that
It
moment.
would. I've
Even if
never.
it seemed completely innocuous and seamless, and even if there was someone with you, who would have, ostensibly recognized something unusual happening with you, that could be. And I know you said it was kind of at a distance, so maybe this doesn't apply here, but the MUFON sort of statistics anyway indicate that if you had a close, encounter with the craft, and especially if it seemed like it was, responding to you, it moved away or phased out or whatever when you looked down and then looked back and then it was gone. To me, that seems slightly indicative that it was paying attention to you, that, and you hear that so often, that as soon as I looked away and looked back, I had a friend that just had 2 experiences like this. He looked away for a second, looked back, and then it disappeared, right when he, moved his attention. I think they're actually trying to tell you in these experiences that they're close, aware of, what's going on in your consciousness and your perspective.
I agree.
But anyway, okay, let's move on. Let's move on then to what happened with the Barbara Lamb regression. You can.
So I had that first regression with her in April. So a long time had passed. In the meantime, after this December event, in January, my menstrual cycle came back. It came back.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was interesting. Everything went back to normal in that.
And how long was it abnormal and you hadn't gone?
It was abnormal for, I think, 4 months, 3 to 4 months. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was interesting. So we did this regression, and I actually targeted an earlier event that happened to me like in 1991, I think, or 2, when I was chaperoning some students at a dorm room for an event. And I had to sleep in the dorm room by myself, not in my usual place. This was in Virginia. And I had this kind of satanic dream in which I felt like something had stuck a vacuum cleaner into my solar plexus and was going to suck my soul out of me, and I was going to die. And I said in my dream, "Stop in the name of Jesus Christ." And I woke up and I heard wind chimes, and it was really wild. So it always felt like more than a dream, like a spiritual attack.
Was it very vivid? Was it unusually vivid?
It was very odd. In the dream, I was walking through a rock star's house, like an unnamed rock star, just a generic heavy metal looking dude. And he was showing us his mansion, and I was part of some reality film crew. And I was walking through the rooms, and he stopped at this one room, and he said, "Oh, this is my satanic ritual room." And it had like an altar and, black and red stuff. And there was a goat head mounted on the wall. And I just remember the crew walked on past, and I stood in that doorway, and I looked in that room just out of curiosity. And I said, "I dare you to make yourself known to me." In my dream, that's what I said. And as soon as I said that, the goat head came alive and started, making that horrible goat noise at me. And that feeling happened in my chest, and I thought I was going to die. It was like instant as soon as I made that challenge. So that was a really freaky dream.
Yeah.
And so we targeted that. And I actually got beings standing around me with an actual tube in my chest. And they had vertical pupils.
Which regression was this? This wasn't your first regression with Barbara?
No, it was. It was my first regression. Even before we got to the December event, we targeted that. But she said, "Are there any other things that you want to look at?" And I was like, "Well, there was this weird night,
Before we get to that part, so what all came up?
What came up under regression was that there was a bright light in the window. There was some kind of tube actually in my solar plexus, in my chest, coming out of my chest. And there were beings I couldn't make out that were standing around me, but they had vertical pupils. That's all I remember.
That's the only detail you can.
All I remember.
You remember big or tall, short or tall?
No, I was just very afraid, and they had vertical pupils, and I thought that was really weird. And I know that goats, because I used to be an animal keeper and actually took care of goats. They have rectangular pupils. They're very weird. They're not vertical slits like a cat or a reptilian, but horizontal, like rectangular.
Yes, yes.
Very,
that-
very disturbing looking.
You're saying goats have those kind of
Yeah,
goats?
real goats.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
So that was very weird. And then we skipped to the night in December. Do you want me to just tell what happened in that?
Yeah, go ahead. If that covers everything with the when you talked about it.
That's all I remember from that. In the memory of the night in December, I remembered lights in my room that eventually turned into a blue light that had a tinge of turquoise, I would say. It leaned turquoisey blue. And it was very solid. It wasn't like a normal light, like a spotlight. Because I'm an actress, so I know what lighting looks like and spotlights and all that. It was it was like a column of light. And when it hit
the beam,
it was like it had a bottom on it. Does that make sense? Like it was a column that got closer and closer to me. Does that make sense? It was really weird. And
it doesn't make sense with what we think about light, but I think what we're actually talking about here is some kind of technology, that you're actually being manipulated with or levitated with. Yeah.
Right. And when it hit me, what I recalled was curling up into a fetal position and going up through the ceiling and panicking and, saying, oh, I'm going up, 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 up. Now, I did not see anything like a UFO. I just was in this light going through my ceiling.
And you remember the whole journey?
I remember being in the light and being afraid and going high, out of control, curled up in a ball. And then I remember being flat on a table with a white misty light around me. There was no transition period memory. So I go from the blue beam, fetal position, to the being on the table with the white mist all around me and the beings up there. So I was terrified. I just was saying, everyone's looking at me. And Barbara was, it's really hard to be a hypnotherapist because you have to coax people through things verbally because you can't see what they're seeing. You have to make them verbalize everything.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, who is looking at you? And I said, I don't know. I don't want to look. And she made me look. She said, well, look to your side. Look, turn your head and look. And so in my memory, I looked and there was a row of these beings right next to me on the left side. And I can't remember how many there were, but more than 3. There were like maybe 4. And they all looked the same. They had long arms. They had white robes with high collars. They had the big white heads and the big black eyes. And they had some kind of a triangle and circle on their chest, like in the chest area. I don't know if it was a pendant or a brooch or something built into their robes or something.
I had just heard it was a triangle and was the triangle darker or was it like a pyramid sort of?
I don't remember. I just remember a circle and a triangle and a circle, and they all looked alike. And they were telling me to calm down, and I was like, yeah, right. I was hysterical.
They also said it's okay, right? That was another thing.
Like, it's okay, and I'm like, no, it's not okay. And she said, what do they want? And I said, I have a baby and they want it. And all of a sudden my knees opened and nobody was touching my knees. That really scared me because I felt totally out of control. Like they were moving my body parts.
Right.
And then there was another being between my legs that I could not see. I was blocked from seeing that one. But I got a flash of an instrument, like a gynecological tool. And I just got terrified.
Like a speculum type instrument to open
thing, and it looked kind of like an egg beater, kind of like it had slats and a long handle. And anyway, so Barbara said you could go up out of your body and remember it from above if you want. And I said okay. So I popped up, and all I remember is the being that I could not see put this thing in me and took out the instrument, and there was a little fetus thing in there. Very small that I could barely see because there were slats. I could see that it was like flesh colored. That's it.
Right.
I would say it was like a walnut size or something.
Oh, it was a walnut size.
Very
so
small.
That's early term.
Very small. And ran out the room with it. Not ran, but like walked quickly out of the room with it. Didn't show it to me.
Didn't show it to you, didn't present it to you.
Like took it out, I saw it, and then boom, he's gone. And I was just screaming, and I was saying, they didn't even let me see it. And I was crying, and I had this horrible grief, this outrage and this grief, and it was just so shocking. And they don't really communicate with you much, and so that's all I remember. And I was so hysterical. I mean, I must have lost like a couple of pounds in this regression, just sweating and screaming, and my teeth were chattering. It was terrifying to listen to. When I brought my little tape home and made my poor boyfriend listen to it on the cassette, he was like, "Oh my God, what the hell?"
And to me, that's such compelling evidence of the reality of the situation, the emotions, the rawness and intensity of the emotions. It's what convinced John Mack, that abductees were serious. Just the intensity of emotion.
So that was number one.
And and there's not any more details in that experience before we discuss that.
No, that's all I have. And I was just so upset, and it just rocked my world so much. And I'm a talker. I'm an extrovert, and I'm an actress. I talk. I communicate. I went home, and I, of course, told my boyfriend, made him listen to the tape, and then I called my relatives, and I told them. And I mean, nobody knew what to do with this, right? Everybody was like, "What?" I was like the golden child. Okay, I had the great grades, and I was, just had my master's and my big theater successes and all. Like, they did not expect this from me at all. This was not part of my plan. And it was really hard on everybody. It was really hard on my boyfriend because I talked a lot about it to people. Mm-hmm. He was mortified. He was like, "What are you doing? People are going to think you're crazy. It's like you're a born again Christian. It's worse. And you just won't be quiet, and you can't go. I can't take you anywhere." And it was true. I was that way, as stupid as it was. And I still am that way. I mean, I just feel like it's so important. I can't keep it quiet, and I want to be useful in the discussion, and I don't care about my career. It's fine. It is what it is. My husband pays the bills. I don't really care at this point. I'm 57 years old,
And you can't ignore, something like this,
Well, you can't.
It's not intelligent, to sweep under the rug, something major that pertains to you that is really monumental type of thing that you have to understand, and you have to, come
That's
to
how I mean, I don't want to hide I don't want to sit on something like that. I'd go nuts. So I'd rather just say, "Hey, this crazy thing happened to me, and I don't know what it really is, but I'm throwing it out there. And once we all figure it out, I'll have my little place in the analogs of abductee stories once they put it all together." Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm working on a book. I just changed my mind a lot. That's what's been the hardest thing, is because I reserve that right too, to change my mind about all this.
Absolutely. And that's the
new information. And I go, okay, now maybe it was that,
Right.
So I'm still having that problem. And that's part of the reason I haven't finished a book.
And you're always going to think about this stuff too. And no matter what, you're going to come back to it, and you're going to go, "Oh, wait, maybe it happened a little different." So, that's one of the biggest problems. You know that what happened, but then you keep overthinking, you know what I mean? And it's like, wait, did this happen or not? What I mean?
It's not about what happened changing. It's more about, okay, are these actual aliens? Are they a screen memory of a MyLab experience? Absolutely. Are they demonic beings? Like, are they time travelers? Are they from under the ground in a, underground base? Like, it's not really questioning what happened as much as questioning who it is doing what I remember, who it is, and what is the real goal. And are they evil? Are they good? Are they neutral? That is the stuff I struggle with constantly.
Yeah. Let's come up to that question later on. We should go into that as to, do some analysis and what are they. But Todd, did you want to say something? I wanted to go back to the experience and maybe have you bring up those pictures, Todd. Do pictures of grays bother you at all? If you see pictures of
nothing. I'm pretty.
Some people, you kind of have to warn some. So we have so these grays appeared. Did they? So they appeared like they had a white skin tone to you. Is that right?
The one in the drawing that you had just now with the high collar and the robe, that's more like what I saw.
Oh, go back to that one, Todd. And maybe zoom top right.
Yeah, above the cow.
Does that look very similar to the collar?
Yeah.
So it kind of had a V sort of fanned out, kind of like in a V.
Yeah, it was like a high collar like that.
If you can't zoom in on that, we actually do have a closer picture of that being in
I think it's right here.
I don't know if you can zoom in to that. And when you first saw these, I remember you saying in an interview that they seemed like they were tall. You're not sure, you said, that if they were tall or not because you were in a lying position, but it seemed as though they were tall. I would say that.
Go ahead.
I would say that if they were the short grays, it would be apparent that they were short grays because they're so short, and we're talking, 3.5, 4.5 feet. They're like children. It would have been apparent if they were the short grays. So I'm thinking that maybe these were taller grays and these weren't the small typical short grays that people see.
They seem tall to me, but I was lying down, and I'm only 5 foot tall, so 5'1", so everything's tall to me. But because also they're so thin, it could give the illusion of them being taller than they were. But the long arms definitely stood out, the high collar, and the wraparound eyes. Yeah.
And these eyes seem a little bit more horizontal than normal, rather than.
Right. It was more like the close up. It was more the wraparound, like the one on the right.
Like so those eyes do kind of match up to what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, did the face appear? We're learning more and more about the grays from our guests, and our last guest, Karen Wilkinson, brought up there was a taller species of gray that she came across, and what was different between the taller species of gray and the shorter species of gray was that their facial expression, that there was movement that would happen. The mouth would sometimes open a little bit. The eyes would shift around. What did these ones seem like? Did they seem like the faces were completely motionless? Like did the eyes move? Do you notice? Do you remember any kind of detail with the face?
Oh, maybe my sneezing.
What?
Reaction. I don't know. Pardon me. No, I didn't notice the faces having any expression at all. And what I'll say about the first regression beings that were standing in a row next to me on my left, they were very glowy. So the room was misty, and they didn't stand out perfectly in their form to me, in my impression of the misty room. So in a later regression, there was no mist, but in that particular regression, they were like, I don't know if they were illuminated or luminous robed beings, but they didn't seem super solid, or the mist was either so thick that I couldn't make them out clearly.
Okay, well that matches up with what people have said. Even one of our own guests, Coley Weber, I believe, said that the grays that she encountered seemed like they had a glow to them. Some of the abductees that went to John Mack described their grays similarly as being white skin toned, and they had a little bit of a glow to them, which I always point out. The luminescence, is typically a feature that I attach to more spiritually advanced type of beings.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I can only hope that all this is for something good, and I do have very mixed feelings about it. I count this whole general experience coming into my life as the greatest thing that ever happened to me and the worst thing that's ever happened to me, because it's so complex.
Mm-hmm. And what else was I going to say? So there's no other communication other than it's okay, relax. That was the only thing that was communicated. They didn't say anything about, no, there was one other thing they said about the baby, didn't they? They said, you have a baby that's ours, or was that correct?
They said Barbara asked me, what do they want? And I said, I have a baby and they want it. So they told me that in some fashion. Like I knew that from them.
I see. Okay.
It was all telepathic. So if there was like a mind meld, a little bit.
Right. So it was telepathic. Yeah. Okay. Now, during this experience, so you did not have any kind of shift in consciousness that occurred in which you at some point had some remembrance of, what happens to a lot of abductees is they're extremely terrified at first, like they're seeing the things for the first time, they're shocked, and then at some point they switch into an altered state. Okay. And then they realize, oh, I remember this being, or I remember the previous abductions, that happened. Did anything similar happen like that?
I didn't remember any previous abductions, but I did start to suspect that I had had them as a child because of circumstantial things I remembered from childhood that were kind of flags for me. When I read about the symptoms of childhood abduction in other people, like Whitley Strieber and people, I said, I had that too. I had that. So things like,
what were those things? Yeah.
well, some physical things like extreme allergies, extreme nosebleeds. I had to have my nose cauterized.
Sinus issues and nosebleeds are both.
Recurring sinus infections and things like that, respiratory illness. I once had an x-ray at Tulane Medical Center for Children, and I remember sitting in a big conference room with my mom, and they had an x-ray with a spot on my lung, and they asked me if I smoked cigarettes, and I was like, no. I think I was probably 9 years old or something, and they didn't know why I had this spot showing up on my lung. But subsequent x-rays I don't have a spot on my lung now, so that was weird. And then I had paranormal fears as a child. I wasn't afraid of people. I was more afraid of my closet, of the woods next to my house, something weird. I used to walk through the woods to go to my piano teacher's house, and then I remember one day I wouldn't walk through the woods anymore, and I don't remember why. And it could have been I saw a snake on the trail, or it could have been something like that, like wildlife. But I often wonder, did something happen to me in the woods by my house? I don't know, but I just had paranormal fears as a kid. I was terrified of anything reptilian, of the show The Land of the Lost with the Sleestacks. I was
inordinately
to that show, but it was like a love-hate thing with the, oh God, the Sleestacks are coming off. The Creature from the Black Lagoon scared me. Vampires scared me. There's a lot of crossover imagery in the vampire myth.
So some things scared you more than others. Like did you have like an inordinate fear of reptilians or reptiles compared to like other monsters or other? There was just some.
Like I wasn't afraid of mummies or Frankenstein. It was just anything reptilian or, and then actually I did, growing up in Louisiana, I did actually have snakes in the yard and lizards and stuff. So, I mean, I was afraid of actual reptiles and lizards too. But I also remember lying on the bed, looking up at a light fixture that was kind of circular and it had a screw in the center. And I remember thinking, as I was kind of meditating on this light fixture, that it looked like a UFO. And I remember kind of having almost an altered state while I was looking at that light fixture once as a child, taking a nap, looking at that thing. Just very, random things like that. I was a pretty brave kid. Like I was a tomboy. I played outside. I rode horses. I went roller skating. I wasn't a fearful person, but I did have like paranormal fears.
You did have some phobias with some particular things, which is another commonality. Phobias to UFOs or ET type things or movies with aliens?
No, my first memory of seeing anything sci-fi was I saw Star Wars and I loved it. And then I remember seeing Close Encounters with my mom and brother and sister. And what was weird about that movie, which I loved, was she sat in the car and she couldn't start the car. She was all emotional. And she kind of looked at us and said, I want you to know if the spaceship comes, I'm going. And we were like, really, Mom? Like, thanks a lot, And I later asked Bashar about that. The guy who channels Bashar, Daryl Anka. I asked Bashar in a channeling session, why did my mom say that? And
What did he say?
And he said what she really meant was, when the spaceship comes, I go, and it comes, and I go, and it comes, and I go.
So she was.
Yeah, he made it sound like she was having contact and wasn't aware.
Uh-huh.
And then she was actually my aunt, because my mothers are sisters. It's weird, but I was adopted by my aunt, and I also lived with my uncle, their brother, for a while, who worked for NASA all his life, and under Werner von Braun. So then you bring in the whole, like, am I on a list because I have NASA relatives? And I asked him about it before he died, and he wouldn't tell me anything. I don't know if he knew anything or not, but obviously if he did, it would have been NDAs.
Was he like being tight-lipped about something, or he just didn't know?
He wasn't. He didn't mock me. He said, if it's true, it's NSA, and they're never going to tell you, and you're just going to have to get over it. And I was like, okay. And he described once jogging and going out of the body and watching himself jog. Like, that's how he tried to identify with what I was telling him had happened to me. And now my cousin, his daughter, is the payload manager of the space station. So, I talked to Chris Bledsoe about my NASA relatives, and he said, Camille, they can't tell you anything if they know. Just don't ask them. They'll go to prison. They can't tell you anything. Mm-hmm. So I expect that, I guess, that, people don't want to go to prison and lose their pension and everything.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But it's a factor in my why me pile.
Right. Yeah, it could be. And yeah, I mean, it is the case, with a lot of abductees or experiencers in general, that they have some family members that are either in the military or, been in government somewhere. Okay, so the fetus seems like it was that they removed from you was an early stage fetus.
Yeah, and I never had any follow-up. I tried regressions about that. I've never seen it presented to me or in a tank or any of the stuff you read about other people. I have no idea what happened with that. Bashar told me I had many children on the ships, for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's just one of the really profound things. Right now, they're grown up, probably. Yeah. It's one of it's hard to wrap your head around that fact. I think we lose sight of the fact. I mean, what are they doing now?
It really is a block I have. It really is. And, when I had my son here, my actual son here on Earth, when I was 35, which my husband kind of had to push me to do, because I was terrified of having children. And he said, oh, come on, you're in a good astrological cycle for having a baby. In the next 2 years, let's do it. And I was like, okay. And I did it. And I mean, I'm really glad. I don't regret it or anything, but I was scared to have a baby. And when I first was pregnant with him, the first trimester, before anything is showing and you're throwing up all the time, it's really awful, actually. It was for me. But I was very anxious about, because all these pregnancy symptoms were the same as what I had back then. And just the nausea and the anxiety and the sore breasts and certain things, I was like, oh, that was real. That was, just like this. And I actually called Dr. Mack, and I said, do you have any clients that had an alien baby, whatever that was, and then a human baby, and they can relate to my stress right now? And he actually had someone call me and talk to me about it and help me kind of like, she said, as soon as you get to the second semester, you'll be good. And as soon as you can see the bump and, it's not going to disappear. It's yours. So just chill out.
John Mack said this to you.
Well, his client, the lady, I asked him to hook me up with the lady that he knew, and that's what she said to me. And it was true. Once I had, the baby showing and everything, even though I had the nausea all the way through, I relaxed more and knew that it was really ours, and it was going to go okay, and it went okay. So,
Was this a known abductee, one of John Mack's clients that had gone public or anything, or was it just someone that?
I don't even remember her name. I should have written it down, or I may have it somewhere, but I don't know it off the top of my head. That was so long ago.
Right. Now, when you had that child, and you were going through the process of birth, was there any unusual sort of anxieties or fears that cropped up?
I mean, yeah, having birth is the most traumatizing thing, other than aliens, in my life, right? And it was awful.
So
It was really rough. I tried to do it naturally, and I did all these classes for that, and it just went out the window. And I had to have an emergency C-section, and I was shaking, and it was really hard on me physically, and the whole thing was really hard. I mean, my husband is gigantic. He's 6'3" and I'm 5'1", and I had a gigantic baby, and it wouldn't come out, and they had to cut him out of me. And it was just really hard. I only have one. I stopped after that. I was like, okay, that's enough. So it was hard.
Yeah, right. Okay. Before we move on, let me just make sure there isn't anything else to cover with that experience, that regression experience. So you think, okay. What I wanted to say was, so you had another regression where you combed over the same abduction experience, and in the subsequent regression, there were some differences. The room wasn't misty like it was before.
Right. So the next time, I would wait to get regressed till I had something suspicious happen. So what happened next was my boyfriend went out of town. This was July of '96. And my boyfriend went out of town for a week, back to New Orleans to film a TV show. And so I was sleeping alone for a week. And I woke up 3 mornings in a row at 4 a.m. sharp. And my clock was, we had digital clocks back then. There were no cell phone.
Like not 401, not 402, but 400.
3 nights in a row. And I didn't hear a noise or anything. So I was waking up, looking at the clock going, why am I waking up? What is going on? I didn't hear a noise. Like, what's happening? And I don't remember anything in the room or, nothing memorable. So the third morning I woke up, I was going to go to the beach and see my friend. And so I had to shave. So I was shaving my legs. And I noticed this bleeding, like freshly scabbed over bleeding, not currently bleeding, but fresh scabs, red, of a triangular puncture array on my left leg, on my calf. And I just, as soon as I saw it, I knew. I was like, that is some alien thing. I've seen it. I've seen one of those in a video or a show or a book or something. That's a thing they do. I knew it. I recognized it. So I wanted to target that. I've since then met a bunch of people who've had that triangle on their body. And this time I went to Yvonne Smith, who was the other lady in town who did regressions for abductees. So I just wanted to go to a different person. I love Barbara, but I just was curious, the journalist brain in me. I wasn't even writing for UFO Magazine yet, but I had that brain, the detective brain. So I went to Yvonne and we did a regression, and it came up. This time the blue light came, but I didn't go out the ceiling in the ball shape. This time I was flat above my bed, levitated and rotated, and I went out the window in this blue light. And I remember feeling kind of trippy going through the window, like I was sticking my arm in a bucket of room temperature water. Like there was a slight change, but it was like, wow, I'm going through the window, And then I was not in a misty room all of a sudden. I was just on a table, but it was more like a regular room. I don't recall seeing cabinets per se, but I do remember it was more like a room with walls. And there were 3 beings around me that were short and had wrinkly dark heads, like I want to say brown heads that were wrinkly. And there was 1 at my left foot and 2 at my head. And I remember being very repulsed by them. And one of them, I was crying and cussing at it. And I said, you make me scared of little kids, but you're not little kids. You look like little kids, but you're not little kids. And I had recently had this experience substitute teaching when I had been with this class. They didn't speak English and there was no lesson plan. So I was trying to get the kids started on a drawing project while I came up with a plan. And so I said, where does your teacher keep the paper so you guys can draw me a picture. And they came up to me and they grabbed me by the arms, these little cute kids, they were third grade. And they said, this way, miss, and they were pulling me to a cabinet. And my whole body went into this like a cellular memory of being pulled with little somethings that height, And it took me a second because I had a cellular memory. And I held it together.
In the memory.
But I was like, oh my God, this feels very familiar. It was
being pulled. You had a memory of being
pulled somewhere, like having some beings guiding my arms and walking me somewhere. Does that make sense?
Really short. Can you bring back up our drawings, Todd? Did you ever see these beings? Did you ever see their eyes at any point?
I don't remember their eyes. I remember the tops of their heads.
And they were brown and wrinkly.
They were wrinkly.
I wonder if those were, so there are these ones that there have been grays witnessed. I mean, they definitely have wrinkles, but being that these had brown skin, they're the little sort of midget ones that are kind of like they've got wrinkles on them. No, it's not those. Oh, yeah, yes, these ones.
Yeah, so I something like that. The wrinkly tops of the head and the brow line is. I don't remember hoods. I just remembered wrinkly heads that were dark colored. They weren't white.
Yeah, sometimes they don't have hoods. Sometimes they're blue, but most of the times I've heard they're brown. And the wrinkles, some people see it as, more like big furrows, rather than just wrinkles, it was folds of the skin.
It could have been that, like a Shar-Pei kind of thing.
Right. And they're very short. And they don't quite have they have deep set eyes that when people look at them, they resemble almost like an animal's eyes, rather than a gray's.
I was very repulsed by them. And one of them put its hand on my forehead when I was screaming at it. And I said, get your freaking hand off me, you little bastard. But it was stroking my forehead, and that calmed me. And I remember I was like, all my anger melted away. And I was like, just do whatever you got to do and let me go home. And I was still crying, but it was like they took the wind out of my sails. They took the rage out of me.
Like the calm. So did it feel, describe more of that feeling? Like, did it feel good? Like, did it almost feel like a drug good? Like a kind of like, it felt like
they just took my anger away. I still had sadness. But they took the energy out of it. They took the rage and the terror down, way down. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, I see. Yeah. So they sort of quelled the emotions.
Yeah. I don't want to say drugged, more sedated in an energetic way.
And you were paralyzed throughout. You had the paralysis, right? You
right.
Couldn't or anything. Were you unclothed during this experience and the other experience?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember. I do remember because I was so fixated on them. I think my attention just was on them. That's interesting, that drawing.
Well, this is Savage Talk. This is one of the grays that had wrinkles on the screen.
Yeah, and this is why I brought it up, because of what she was describing. I was like, boy, that sounded like Sev's type of being.
Well, in the room with these three beings, there was this other being that I reacted very differently to, the doctor being. And the doctor being was standing by my right leg. And the doctor being was one of those tall grays with the robe and the big white head and the long arms and the long fingers on the arms.
Same exact being.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, those were kind of glowy and misty, and this one was more distinct. But I remember thinking, okay, I was watching him stand in profile down by my right foot. But he was taking an instrument from the ceiling. There was a thing hanging down from the ceiling, and he took this wand kind of a thing that had a tube, and he selected a tip off of another, like a circular rack with tips on it, and he put a tip on the wand, and then he held my left leg. He's standing on my right, but he held my left leg and he just popped it in my calf real quick, and I remember looking at his fingers, and they were so beautiful to me. So unlike the little ones that I was repulsed by, this one had me kind of enraptured by its
By the fingers.
beauty, by the fingers. And I remember, like, I think I even said something in the regression or to myself that it looked like to me, like an Albrecht Dürer painting. Like I took art history, and there was an artist who painted these hands with these really long fingers, and I just remember thinking they were so beautiful. And he had the white robe with the sleeve hanging down, the white sleeve, and these long fingers. They just mesmerized me. Now, as I was looking at this being, it had the profile of a big gray with the black wraparound eyes. But then for a moment, I saw two antennae come out of its head, or appear out of its head. I don't remember them like coming out, but just being there and being confused and saying, oh, now he looks like a big bug. And so I don't know if it was a gray or a mantis being, and I was just, having difficulty with my memory, or it was shape-shifting. I don't know what it really was, but at one point it had two antennae on its head.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you're sure that when you first saw it, it didn't have the antenna?
I'm pretty sure,
So I wonder if it was masking itself, not as because what happens, and this is what people refer to as the screen memories, but it really, in my opinion, it's they have a psionic ability to interfere with your perception of things, to where at the brain level, because we're not actually seeing the real world, we're seeing a representation of the real world that our brain is creating, and they have some kind of psionic ability that can, on that level of things, alter what you're seeing. And you have a lot of experiences where the conscious memory was, it seemed like some kind of weird guy, some weird uniform, and then they regress, and then they find out actually it was a gray, and it will suddenly they'll be watching it. And there's occasions too where there's males who think that they're having intercourse with a female ET, and then all of a sudden it shifts, and it's a gray hovering, levitating over their body, and
wow,
they've got a suction cup on their genitals, and they're taking the sperm samples. And so a lot of times, when they've got this psionic thing going on and they're masking your perception, there's a bleed through of what the being really looks like, during the midst of it sometimes. I wonder, potentially, I mean, this is just total speculation, if that was a little bit of a bleed through, and for some reason it chose to mask itself as a gray,
yeah,
to maybe mislead you, to maybe give you the impression, or give any of the researchers studying your case the impression, that we're talking about the grays here.
Right.
Possible, you don't hear a lot of accounts like this, but they usually mask themselves as humans, but it could be an ET masking itself as another ET. And that's interesting. Yeah, facet.
That's all I remember of that. I don't know what that thing was they put in my leg. I had my leg x-rayed. There was nothing in there. It was more like almost like a vaccination. When you would get a TB test and they had those little those little plastic things with the 3 needle pricks, and they would pop it in you, and it would leave 3. It was kind of like that kind of a feeling. Like it was a quick and easy thing.
And he had multiple tips that he selected from. He had a bunch of different tips, and he picked out one.
Mm-hmm. It was like a rack of tips, and he turned it and picked one.
Right. So on that, so I have the theory that in these cases, when they're marking you like that, like in the case of Seb Todd, if you remember, we talked about this, that I don't know if there was anything medically necessary that they were doing in these cases, other than just leaving you with something visible for you to see. What happened as a result of seeing that physical mark? Did you go through a revelation and discover that there's, oh my God, this is I think I'm being taken. Like, did it dawn on you by that experience that there's a physical dimension to this now, because I've got a mark on my body?
It was the other one was internal, right? The missing fetus, whatever that was. But this was external. So it did have a visual effect on my, you know, and also because the fact that I had seen it before in other people's cases. And I was like, I know what that is, you know? So that feeling of validation was strong with the triangle incident. I have had other marks. I've had a grid on my shoulder, like a bunch of not bleeding things, but like little marks, like a square with little dark colorations that faded.
I saw that, and that looked very much like the grid marks and the red grid. Todd, you want to bring up pictures of the red grid phenomenon? That looked very similar to me. I don't know if you've ever heard of the red grid phenomenon.
No, I've heard of grids, like little squares being put on people. And I didn't remember getting that. I didn't know I had it. I think my boyfriend saw it on my shoulder and pointed it out to me. I had no idea when it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is something that is people feel is related to the abduction phenomenon, or at least a certain percentage of the people who find these red grid markings on their body feel that they have other signs of being an abductee.
Another thing I had an incision on my right shoulder. I have a little picture of like just a little 1/2 inch slice, and that was associated with the dream. And in the dream, I was bitten by a spider. And in the morning when I had the mark, ever since I had that dream and the mark, I would have this bee sting sensation happen on my shoulder, and then I would get a jolt of electricity down my arm and shoot out my fingers like I don't know what that was, but it would be that bee sting, and then the jolt would just go through my hand. And I met a guy at a party who claimed to be someone who reverse programmed, who deprogrammed mind control victims. And I initially asked him about another thing in my body, and he said, I don't read that that's affecting you, but what have you got in your right shoulder? And I was like, oh yeah, that.
Wait, what? So what was that? I missed that.
He read that energetically. Just talking to me at a party. I didn't even mention it. And he said, yeah. I said, oh my God, the shoulder thing. Yeah. You know, so he did the session on me and he cleared me of it. And it never happened again, that bee sting sensation thing.
Interesting. Yeah. So do these look at all similar to the red grid that you had?
Yes. I would say, I'm wearing my contacts. I don't see perfectly, but yeah, it was a square of dots like that going across. Yes, exactly. Yes, I had that.
Okay, so you are an abductee, and that lends credence to the hypotheses that people have put forward that these are abduction related. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so those are pretty much my marks. I mean, the next thing that happened was the mysterious object in my tooth, and that led to a MILAB or MILAB memory.
Wow.
So we can talk about that next. Eventually, I want to get to my good light being story, because that was the only really good one. But,
yes, we are definitely going to get to that in just a bit here.
Before we just move on, though, I just want to make sure there wasn't any other details that we left out. So you have the 4 a.m. thing. What do you think was going on with that? You waking up 3 times at 4 a.m.
You know,
to me, that's another
thing
that makes it seem like they're trying to get your attention, maybe, and get you to.
I think when they do patterns, it does get your attention, because it's just too. It can't be random that you wake up at the same exact time. And I think also years later, you know, I had heard about the 3 a.m. frequency, that a lot of people were awakened at 3. And I brought this up in one of these support group meetings at a conference. And I said, well, mine was at 4 a.m. sharp. And they said, what time of year was it? I said it was in summer, July, you know, and they said, oh, well, they don't do daylight savings. I thought, good point. That is like an interesting thing to recognize, right? If we didn't do daylight savings, it would have been 3 a.m.
Yes, it would have.
Yes.
That is interesting, yes.
And in Catholicism, 3 a.m. is called the devil's hour, because Christ died on the cross at 3 p.m. and the devil does everything inverted. So 3 a.m. is when the devil comes and bothers people.
Okay, so that's where that comes from. I've heard of the 3 a.m. thing, but I didn't know that aspect of it. Okay. Interesting. Okay, well let's move on to the MyLab abduction, which starts out though with your dentist appointment, though, I believe.
Yeah, well, no, it started out with my dentist. I had this wonderful Beverly Hills dentist who was Iranian and really handsome. I kind of had a crush on him. And I said to him when I started going to him, because I went to him to get all my fillings changed out for the white fillings, because I was an actress, right? And I didn't want the old mercury type fillings in there. So he changed all my fillings and I loved them. And I only had problems with one. And I said, I love all my new fillings, but this one is bothering me. Like, I don't know why. Well, it's sensitive to salad dressing and cold and hot and all that. And he said, well, give it a little time, come back. So I came back and he said, the seal is good. I don't know why it's bothering you, but I can redo it. I'll just dig it out and I'll use a different brand and I'll redo it. And I said, that would be great. So he dug it out. And then he gets to this part where he's drilling and finally he gets a mirror out. Oh, and by the way, when I first started going to him, I told him I was an abductee, and I, because I do that. And I said, I read that sometimes people freak out in the dentist chair because they have flashbacks. And I said, that's never happened to me. I've never had a problem going to the dentist, but I'm just telling you that. And if you ever find anything weird in my body, you have to tell me. So I had already told him, I prepped him. And then lo and behold, so then he gets a mirror out and he's showing me this thing and he's scratching on it. And he said, do you see this? And I said, yeah. And he said, this is very hard. It's spherical or half spherical. And I've been drilling on it forever and it's turning into powder. And it wasn't there before. This was not in your tooth before when I put this filling in. I don't know what this is. It's not your old filling. And I thought, oh my God.
So he's the one that did that filling and it wasn't there.
Yeah, he had just done that filling and he had taken out the old mercury one and put in this new white porcelain one. But he swears it wasn't the old mercury one. Like he was saying it's not that I didn't dig out the old filling properly before. This is a new thing. I don't know what this is. And he was freaked out by it. And what do you want me to do? And I said, well, just put the filling in and I'll think about it. I don't know, can you get me a chunk of it? And he said, no, because it's so hard. It's turning into dust and I have to keep spraying it with water and it's going down the drain. I can't get a piece of it. So anyway, he filled it up and then it stopped hurting. At least whatever he did fixed the pain part, right? But it made me want to go hunting. So I did another regression with Barbara Lamb this time. I said, Barbara, oh gosh, my dentist found something in my tooth. Let's go see. So I was thinking I was going to get aliens, because I had before. But this time I came to on a table. There was no light. There was no, floating through anything. I was just on a table. And I was in a normal exam room with cabinets and shelves and doors. And there were these two men in there. And they were in lab coats. And they had khaki pants and black shoes. And they were calling me a troublemaker. That's all I got. I didn't get any more language, just the word troublemaker. Mm-hmm. And then I had this image of them, one of them squirting a syringe into my cheekbone, into my tooth, like through the external, through the cheek, not up through my mouth.
Same side of the mouth and everything as the tooth.
Yeah, this is where the tooth is, and just squirting something in here, not going in my mouth like you would think, like going through the side of my face.
Right.
And I felt drugged. I did not feel that paralysis feeling. I didn't feel that immobilized but super alert feeling that I have with the beings. I felt drugged. And I was really afraid.
Yeah. Did you have one of our last abductees mentioned this, Karen Wilkinson? She described it as you couldn't speak even, like it was,
you're like
there was a
almost asleep.
Yeah.
And then I remember they rolled me down a hall. It had walls, we came into a large hangar type room and there was a helicopter and they put me in the helicopter and then the ceiling retracted and opened up. And I remember it was really bright. And I was like,
Daytime.
It was daytime.
Mm-hmm.
And we flew up, and they brought me to my house in Silver Lake, where there was this field down below where my house was. It's still there. I just recently visited that field. It's still a field. Mm-hmm. And they landed in the field, and they said, go home and take a nap. And I don't remember getting out and going home and taking a nap. I don't remember how they got me, but it was a daylight situation, and I don't know what that was.
Okay. All right. So going back to whenever you were with the two men who were in lab, did you see their faces at all?
I don't remember their faces. They were Caucasian.
They were Caucasian. Okay, so and the only communication was they referred to you as a troublemaker. So I wonder in what sense they meant troublemaker. Like, was it in the sense that they had a procedure to do and maybe you were giving them trouble somehow with that, or resisting, or waking up, or something, or moving, and you were just a troublemaker in that sense? That you were a troublemaker, or do you think it was in your life?
I think it was in my life. I think I was talking too much. That's how I felt.
Uh-huh.
And what's weird is they had khaki pants, and from what I understand, that indicates Navy, unless it's a, non-military, contractor type company out there doing this. I did meet with a Navy guy once later through my friend Richard Saraday, who died. He was a journalist, and this guy we met was named Michael Younger. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was in the scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he met with me, and he said, "Yeah, you're the real deal." And he said, "I said, why is the Navy so involved?" And he said, "Well, the Earth is 2/3 water." And I said, "Oh yeah." And he called me Angelfish. He gave me a code name, Angelfish. I don't know what that was. But I had a Navy boyfriend too once, and I asked him, like when I was in college, I had this boyfriend. So I called him up and I said, "Hey, I'm an alien abductee. What do you know?" And it was weird because he was on an aircraft carrier, and he said, "All I know is they take people who are very pure." And it was the most weird thing to say. And I don't even know what he meant. I mean, obviously not. He didn't mean sexually pure, because I was, his lover back in college. I don't know what he meant by that. And I never asked him again what he meant by that. But it was a very weird thing to say.
And it's very weird that he would say anything or knew anything at all. Is he just an enlisted serviceman in the Navy,
right.
or
it was weird.
Was he in Navy intelligence, or what do you know?
No, he was a graphite expert for F-18s.
Uh-huh. So that's an odd detail.
I know. Maybe he's an abductee too, and it just came out subconsciously from him. I don't know.
That's always a possibility with that too. It's always a possibility too that they set up, who knows, MK Ultra assets around you that might not even know, that they're being used in relation to you somehow.
You never know. That's why it's such an issue of trust. This whole thing, it creates so many trust issues. You just don't know the true story behind anything. Maybe
they meant bloodline, possibly, Xanon.
Well, that's the thing too. That's where your brain goes. You're like, what is it? Is it my DNA? Is it my family lineage? I do have the negative blood type. I do have the Irish ancestry.
You do.
I hear that's common. I have green eyes. So I don't know if these are factors. I've been in support groups. I know Black people. I know all people of all races and religious backgrounds that have this going on. It doesn't seem to be predominantly a Celtic thing, but from what I think it was Daryl Sims who had found there were a lot of Celtic people and Cherokee ancestry people that he said were coming up in the numbers.
This is interesting, almost synchronistic, because I just brought this up to our last guest. He's a Native American, and I brought up there's one particular insider, this guy, I'm trying to get him on the show, Daniel Brad McBolin, not his real name, who's really, really deep inside NRO, NSA, MK Ultra asset, who said that there's particular races that they have an interest in, and they actually have an interest in suppressing these races because of something that he referred to as the metagene factor. That Celtic bloodlines and Native American bloodlines had this metagene factor in a stronger way than is ordinary, and I don't know what that is exactly. He seemed to suggest that it was something relating to the manifestation capacity.
I feel pretty powerful in that way. I do.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty amazing manifestations. So I don't know. It's the other thing too, is that a lot of times people get what they call, activated superpowers or whatever. The only thing I've noticed that is extraordinary in my realm of influence is building on my skills as a communicator and being extroverted, right? I have a very uncanny ability to walk into a room of people at a party or an event and go right to the person who's involved in this and make friends. And it's not that they jump out at me. It's not like the little girl in the red coat in Schindler's List. I just know who to go talk to. It's so weird. It happens to me all the time. It happened to me last week. I was at the Reagan Library seeing an event related to the Reagan movie that's coming out with Dennis Quaid. And I went by myself, and it was a huge auditorium full of people. And I sat next to this couple that I've never met. And I start talking to them, typical me, oh yeah, I'm an actress. I can't wait to see the actors talk. And I mentioned, and I'm into UFOs. And they said, oh, our daughter's into UFOs, and she works with Ryan Graves. And I was like, what? and then the guy was an engineer for NASA. And so we made fast friends, right? And then we go to dinner together and we sit at this banquet table with a bunch of strangers. And one of the guys at the table was a Lockheed Martin engineer. So I'm updating them on all the UFO news. Like everyone's waiting for Lou Elizondo's book. And there's the Peruvian mummies. You got to go on Twitter and look at the Peruvian mummies. It's real. And we were having the best time. And what are the odds out of all the people at that event? I would sit with them.
Right. I noticed this too in my life. Who is Ryan Graves, by the way? Is that the Navy pilot?
He's one of the whistleblowers. Yeah, the Navy whistleblower that's been on Skinwalker Ranch, and he has a new organization about safety in space or for flying, for pilots and stuff.
And he was also the one that witnessed that. Was it the Tic Tac, or was it one of the other famous government?
I can't remember his testimony off the top of my head, but he's one of the Navy pilots that saw UFOs. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really uncanny. Yeah, interesting.
This is my life. I've met I met my husband that way. I met my husband at a gas station in Malibu. And we started talking about my bumper sticker, and we both had UFO backgrounds, and here we are. We swapped business cards and then had a date, and here we are having our anniversary next month, 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I know. So that's my skill. That's the only skill I know that I have.
Is to locate the experiencers. Yeah, I've been noticing this in my own life. Yeah, I run into a person. I think, this is just, nothing unusual about this person. And then it turns out, when I get to talking to them, that they are special and have had experiences or uncanny dreams, vivid dreams. Anyway, getting back to the My Lab abduction. So you're a troublemaker, and you think that this is not pertaining to you causing them trouble during the procedure, but in your ordinary life, you're causing them trouble somehow, and this is presumably why they abducted you.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. It could be something else, like you're mentioning. I have no idea.
And presumably the implant maybe was intended to correct for this troublemaking. that this was
Yeah.
something intended to, and they put it in the tooth. Now that's odd, some kind of implant, intended to, I mean, who knows,
I don't know.
adjust your troublemaking behavior somehow.
I know. I have no idea. I mean, you
Place.
wonder. I don't know what's a tracking. I mean, you think they're more sophisticated with tracking people. They don't need
Right.
it. Like they can read your frequency from a satellite or something. I mean, who knows, So I don't know what it was. That's all. There was no conversation other than troublemaker, and then get out and go home and take a nap when I landed.
What was their tone of voice? Were they when they said troublemaker? Were they really gravely serious about it when they said that?
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if they spoke words. Like I couldn't tell you they had an accent or any of that. I'm guessing they spoke words. Like it's been so long since. Oh, here's another thing about that regression that was weird. When Barbara went to hand me my cassette and we tested it, it hadn't recorded. I don't have a recording of that session. I don't have a transcript. I have nothing but the memory.
Do you think something has been lost in that tape that you don't remember, or what do you think?
I just really like to have the transcriptions. I like to really, because I forget, I like to go back and look at exactly what I said, and I don't have that for that.
Was this Barbara's tape that she was using?
It was Barbara's tape, and she had not had that happen before. And she also said she had never had a MyLab client before that time.
Which I found interesting, when I heard you say that. In what year is this? Is this 95 or was this
90? I want to say 97-ish.
And that was her first. You were her first MyLab abductee.
She said, unless she was lying. I don't know why she would lie about that, but
I don't think. She
certainly knew that they were happening to people. But to tell me that I was her first was, I remember being like, really? Like, you've done so many regressions. I was kind of shocked.
It's surprising, but this leads to the whole thing that I find puzzling with, the abductee researchers and regressionists, how, Barbara Lamb, all of her cases, led her to the conclusion that, ETs are all positive, essentially. She has this very sort of love and light sort of perspective of it, and she's done, she's probably done a lot of cases, she's one of the more prominent abductee researchers. And yet you have, people like David Jacobs, he's done like at least 1,000 people, regressed 1,000, and was led to a completely different, diametrically opposed conclusion.
I know.
And they're just getting completely different cases, therefore, in order to arrive at, completely contrary conclusions. And I find that a little bit odd, and I always wonder, I don't like this fact because the entire abduction field rests upon, what we're discovering in these regressions, but we have to be open to the possibility, that there could be forces out there that are interfering with the experience of the ostensible memories that abductees are having, during these regressions. And if there isn't some grooming, some deliberation in terms of creating different camps. And
I agree. As you can see by my face, the last few years have really aged me. And I always say I have a face for drama. I do a lot of drama. The trauma is real and everlasting. And the unresolved issues, it's maddening. I went so far as to drop out altogether and go religious at one point. Just drop out of all UFO stuff and go to church. But that hasn't solved my yearning either. It did for a while. It was nice. It was a nice oasis, but it hasn't fixed the quest. For a while, I thought it's demonic. It's demons. I've just been obsessed, But anyway, I could talk about the light beings thing, which was really cool.
Let's linger on that just for a second. What you just said about
Yeah.
the demonic perspective, because we just had Todd, if you remember, Karen Wilkinson, someone from that camp who had the Christian perspective,
Yes.
that they're all demons, uniformly. And I also want to address this too, because we just had an experience where we just experimentally promoted one of our posts and got swamped with people of this Christian ET perspective, and people are telling us you better get down on your knees and pray, and they're demons, and really admonishing us about all of this. Lots. There's a huge amount of people, that fall into this category.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out a problem with it, and this kind of gets to what you were saying about, it didn't really serve you in the quest. As far as analysis goes, if you're an analyst, you can't be running this algorithm that places every single advanced civilization, every single ET intelligence into one single box titled demons.
Right.
That's the inverse of analysis. There's no precision with that. There's no nuance with that.
Right. That's
there's no detail, and you end up with a really sort of fuzzy picture that doesn't really tell you much about the thing, and it's sort of pre-conclude, you're not even really assessing the thing, if you just have this baseline assumption, that everything is demonic.
Right.
And we're not
the angelic. Where are the good? Where are the angelics?
Right.
Right.
So they're like, I'm more along the lines of we're dealing with demonic and angelic beings, and that our problem is our classification system of what's a demon, what's an angel, and what's an alien.
Well, religion really makes a mess of when it comes to ghosts, hauntings,
right.
UFOs, aliens, because in the Bible it says God created man of his own image, and that is it. So if he made him as our reputation would be us, then there could be no other beings. And it gets very slippy sloped here. And I think that what then happens is people say, well, if God didn't create them, then they are demonic. They're some other realm.
They must, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think God created everything, even the demons. So then it becomes, are these beings acting in your best interest or their best interest? Are they predatory? Or are they, catalysts in a good way?
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible seems to be full of UFO stories and full of stories with non-humans.
Yes.
So to me, I see it's all going on. And I don't like to say they're all demonic, because who were the angels? Who was the angel Gabriel, and who were the angels that appeared to all the other people in the Bible that were good? That might have been scary to them and might have forced them to do things they didn't want to do, but were still described as non-human. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, the book of Enoch carries on about, giants and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I just think that the grasp of, how do I want to say this? I guess it's a teaching thing. How you're taught, how you're brought up, how you interpret that Bible is a big thing. I can put out to the world about UFOs, and I get people saying all the time, I need God in my life. I need this. So, I mean, how did they get that stigmata that UFOs or aliens are bad? Where did that come from?
Well, yeah, there is a reference to the devil being the prince of the air in the Bible. So that is usually what they will say. And I don't know, I come from a Catholic background. So the Catholic is more open-minded about non-human entities, and they have dealt with mystics and people that levitated and did all these things. So they're more open-minded to miracles and non-human interaction. And they're all over the UFO they're trying to get ahead of the UFO thing, big time, the Catholic Church. So I don't know. That's a whole other discussion. But it was a very fascinating detour in my brain to go there and also see, I wasn't having abductions after 1996, 97. It all stopped. And I went to different people who prayed over me to make it stop, and it stopped. So I wasn't having it anymore. And so to me, that was evidence that, I had blocked them.
Right. Go into that a little bit. What was that person who prayed over? There was one particular.
A couple of people. This one lady, Mary Angelique Raphael, and she said she came from a background of, I believe she described it as satanic ritual abuse knowledge. And she said that I had signed a contract to work with these beings on a soul level, and I could sever the contract. That's the way she put it.
A soul contract, yes.
She did this prayer. She prayed to Archangel Michael and Saint Germain. That's who she prayed to. And she said, Camille wishes to sever this contract on any time, space, and dimension. And, that's what she did. And I was crying, and it hadn't happened since then. I also went to a guy who did ayahuasca ceremonies with flower essences of ayahuasca. And he did a whole shamanistic, he's a Peruvian shaman. He did this whole thing on me. And then at the end, he walked away and he threw up. And I thought, oh God, is that normal? And he said, oh yeah, I do that at the end. And I thought, well, that's rough. And he said, you had witchcraft put on you, is how he described it. So, it makes you wonder, like, what's really going on? When you have a memory like a MyLab, which was more shocking than the aliens, because it made you feel more betrayed by your own kind. And it made me feel more paranoid. Like, oh my God, if that really happened and I didn't remember it, then what else has happened that I don't remember?
Exactly.
It's very disturbing. And so, your mind can go to all kinds of places where you wonder, like, do I have this in my background or that in my background? Like, I'm an actress. So am I a monarch? Like, you wonder, you say, well, there are a lot of monarch MK Ultra actors, right? Am I one of them? And I don't even know it, So just
do you have a butterfly tattoo?
No, I don't have any butterfly anything around me.
Because that seems to be indicative of the MK Ultra crew.
Yeah, I don't do the one eye, and I'm a total conspiracy theorist. I'm like, all over. Like, I know about all that stuff, but I don't think I've been involved in that. But what if I have and I don't even remember, because this other stuff that happened that I didn't remember.
Well, that's exactly
paranoid.
This is where I wanted to turn to, because at the tail end of your MyLab experience, you are told, you're dropped off in that field next to your Silver Lake neighborhood, and you're told, go home and take a nap, which seems a little bit like a hypnotic suggestion. That that they expected you to just fully and walk home in a kind of trance state or something, and then go nap, and then wake up and not remember anything happened.
Exactly. And I wondered, like, did I have a key? Was my boyfriend home? Like, how did this all even happen without him knowing? They wait till he's away, and they know our schedules. Or are they monitoring up? Like, it made me think of all those things.
Right. It really does kind of open up a whole other box of things in terms of programming, because, and I think that this is something that is in general happening with abductees. Like previously, when I mentioned, when they go into this state where all of a sudden they remember the beings, and they remember what had happened before. I mean, this seems like an altar. I don't know how much you know about trauma-based mind control.
I have read about all that.
Yeah, and the fragmentation of the mind into compartments, which is why you don't remember anything, and that's potentially why you don't remember anything throughout an abduction experience, because an altar is triggered. Maybe these initial abduction experiences, ones that people have which are unusually traumatic, there's these really some details of these abduction experiences almost seem strangely like maybe they're almost intended to cause pain. I wonder, anyway.
I've read of those where they literally traumatize people to just register how they produce, different emotional reactions or hormones. Some people even think they're harvesting the stress hormones from people, and to use.
Yeah, it could be that too. Yes, actually.
So let me just recap this, Camille. From 1996 to 1997, this encompasses that whole the whole alien thing for you, correct?
Really late 95 through 96.
Okay, 95 to 96, and then you had this this person pray for you to stop the whole thing
in 96.
96. Okay.
97, all around in there.
Yeah. I was just curious. I wanted to get a good timeline of that. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, I don't have the exact dates of all that. I do know that my light being good experience happened in 98, I believe, or late 97, because I know I told someone about it in the summer of 98. It had already happened by then because I told this guy that story. And that was really unexpected and beautiful. It was like the icing on the cake of all the darkness was this beautiful light being encounter that I had. So that made it all, like, it eclipsed the bad in a lot of ways because it was so incredibly wonderful and beautiful and ecstatic.
Yeah, please go ahead. Tell us about this ending part here.
I started noticing myself talking about humans in language that suggested I didn't feel human or I was not aligning with humans. And I would catch myself saying things, oh, humans this, humans that, and I thought, why am I doing that? Why am I talking that way and feeling this longing of a group of somethings that I don't remember, but I have this longing, and it's not the ones that had me on the table terrifying me. And I went to Barbara and I said, Barbara, I have a weird target. Can we just target who do I miss? I miss somebody and I don't know who I miss. Can we target that? Is that too vague? And she said, no, we can do that. Said, cool, let's do it. So she put me under, and the first memory I had was this claustrophobic feeling of being in my body and feeling totally panicked. Like I did not want to be in this body, just feeling extremely claustrophobic, like someone was stuffing a sofa into a pillowcase and it was too small. And I was screaming, I don't want to be in this body. It's so weak. It's so small. And I was crying. And she said, well, go to when you felt strong, when you felt powerful. And I popped out and I was in blackness, like space, as a blue light. I was a blue little ball of light. And I recognized my friends Nicole and John as blue balls of light out there with me. And I was crying with recognition at them being balls of light. But then I looked at the earth, which was spinning in my, whatever this was. So for all the flat earthers, I don't know, in my vision, the earth was spinning, but it could have been a trick. Anyway, the earth was spinning and I didn't want to go. It was like being on the edge of a diving board. And I was terrified looking at the earth spinning. And I said, I don't want to go to Earth. And I was crying. And Barbara said, why do you have to go to Earth? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, ask somebody why you have to go to Earth. And I can't remember if I asked first or the beings appeared, but around the same time, she put this idea out. These white light beings appeared that were way bigger than us as the little blue lights. They were magnificent white light. And they had a very vague form of arms and legs and a body, but I couldn't see any details. But when I saw them and I merged with them, it was this love and ecstasy and knowledge and everything good you can imagine all wrapped up into one cosmic love fest. And I was just crying and I was saying, they're my home, they're my family. That's why I wear a white bathrobe. I used to have white robes. And I was crying and there was all this love and all this. And I said, why do I have to go to Earth? And they said, to fight evil. And I said, what? Like, what do you mean? How? And they said, tell people we exist and that we love them. And they gave me this image of this love coming from somewhere beyond them, through them. And then their arms were out pointing at the earth, and this love, these beams of love were coming out of their arms to us. But we were all walking around with black umbrellas. And they said, we're always here sending you this love, and you're all walking around with umbrellas and you don't even know. And I said, that is such a cool image. And I said, well, what do I do? Do I lecture about you? And they said, no, you're supposed to do it in your acting. And I was like, really? Because not much is made, like that. That would be great. And they said, don't worry, we'll set it up so that you meet people and make projects worthy of your time. And it was like, please, yes, do that. Thank you. I will sign up. And they said, the reason you're working so many jobs, because I was catering and faux finishing and substitute teaching and all these crazy jobs. And they said, it's because you like talking to as many people as possible. But if you do it through your acting, you will reach more people and it'll be easier. And I was like, okay. So the very next job I got after that was in a movie called The Encounter, about a man who has an angelic encounter. So I don't know. I mean, not everything I act in is along those lines, believe me, but I have done some things that I feel that are along those lines, like the movie Vice, which was about Dick Cheney. And, that was exposing like the Republican wing of the deep state. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I keep acting and I'll never forget that feeling and those beings. And they're always like, they give me such comfort. It was like a near-death experience, but I wasn't.
Yeah, it sounds very indicative of near-death experience.
Like an induced OBE. It was a hypnotically induced OBE.
Right.
Amazing.
Wow. Yes.
So here I am doing my thing and hoping, we all get through this crazy time on the planet, and disclosure and everything. It seems to be happening at once.
I was just going to say, what is that their message to you, to talk about the disclosure and different beings? And that's what I'm curious on.
Well, they were so insistent about the acting, and I'm not sure if they meant that the projects I'm going to be acting in are fighting evil, or if they meant because I get famous for acting or whatever, it gives me a platform to then talk about UFOs. Now, I've been in an Oscar-winning film. I've won awards. I'm not a big star, obviously, but I am at enough of a platform of success where I can say, hey, I do have a master's degree. I was in an Oscar-winning film. I've been on other shows. I wrote for UFO Magazine for 5 years. I'm not a crazy person. I'm not uneducated. I'm able to do this. Like, sign me up to help people. But I still don't know what the truth is. Like, if I really knew what the truth is, I would do it with way more zeal. But when you don't really know what the truth is, and you're just kind of, going through it and reconfiguring your thoughts about it all the time.
Right.
That's where I am right now.
Are you with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance?
I am. I'm a founding member of that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, wait a minute. I thought I heard something about that with you. So yes, that is verification that you are talking about disclosure, right. And you have talked to many, many people about aliens, UFOs. So you are out there actually. If you realize it or not, you're talking to everybody.
I do. And I manifest meeting people that interest me. Like, I used to be obsessed with Sting, and I met Sting like 3 or 4 times. And Sting's really into UFOs and crop circles. I loved Shirley MacLaine, and I got to meet Shirley MacLaine a couple of times. There's certain people I love from different projects, and you just always hope you'll run into them one day. Like Rutger Hauer. I had this huge crush on Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner. I got to see Rutger Hauer in person, and just, when I wanted to go to England to see the crop circles, I just made it happen, and there's certain things, once I get my mind set on them, I like do it. And so for me, the biggest part has been making up my mind, because once I make up my mind, I'm able to really do amazing things. So, but I do love networking. I do love acting. I do love talking about all this, even though I totally come out and say, I do not know what's going on. I read everything and I don't know exactly what it is, And friends say, they're like, write the stupid book, write it anyway. You can always change your mind. You can write another book later. You can do another edition. Just write the book. So that's another thing I'd like to do this year, maybe finish that.
Yeah, and just don't overthink it, because as soon as you do, you're going to have 100 novels, which is a good thing.
It's just my story. It's like everybody else's abduction book. It's a memoir. It's like, hey, this is my crazy story. Throw it on the shelf with the others, and maybe one day we'll understand all this. And I just want to be a piece of the puzzle. Throw me in, coach. We're trying to figure this out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And because of your regression in that, you have that. You already have those pages that you need, because that going back to rediscover everything, it really helps for putting it in a memoir.
Well, I already started it. It's like 90% written. It's just when I went religious that I dropped out, and now that I've come back, to be open-minded again, I have to adjust the rest of the book. But so much has happened. Like Chris Bledsoe has been a real big influence on me. And I'm just trying to have a more positive attitude, even though parts of it are really scary and dark. I'm trying to have a more positive attitude about disclosure, because we really, it just is what it is. We can't sit here and fight amongst ourselves in the world and destroy ourselves. We need bigger picture. We need the truth to come out on so many things, not just aliens. And it's coming out, whether we like it or not, or whether we're ready or not. It's coming out. Too bad. The internet lives forever. Things are coming out. The veil is lifted, and people are going to have to deal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But in that truth setting, you're always going to have the disinformation. Nobody wants you to know what's really going on. But if you think about it, though, it's very compelling. We talk to the people like you every Monday, and the sense that it makes, if you don't believe in it, then you're on a different plane, because these things happen. The more people we talk to, the more we see that these things are matching up.
Yeah.
And it goes against what the government's saying.
Right. Well, one of my things, my darkest fear is that there are predatory beings on the planet working in conjunction with people that are literally consuming humans. That's my biggest fear. Mm-hmm. And if they're trying to cover that up, I don't blame them for trying to cover that up, but if they're involved in it, it's really evil.
It's the darkest secret. I think it's the darkest secret.
I do think that's what's going on. But I think conversely, there are angelic, benefic beings helping us. And, people say where there may be a prime directive, they can only interfere so much in our awakening. We have to awaken on our own. So I don't know the rules of all that, but I like to think for every really dark fear that I have about that kind of thing, there's an equally loving and light and helpful presence working with us as well. And I just pray. I love Jesus, and I think Jesus is definitely working with the good aliens, angels, whatever they are. And I just go, you know what? I'm on team Jesus and the good aliens. And, for people who don't like religion, fine, whatever. My husband's not into religion. But that keeps me sane and happy and helps me. So I don't like to bash people either that are religious and say it's all demonic. I just say, you know what? Maybe it's not all demonic. Maybe it's demonic and angelic, and maybe you need to expand your ideas of what demons and angels are and go with that. I'll also, fault the UFO community sometimes for being very secular and having no morals at all. And so a lot of people just don't like religion because they don't want any morals to follow. They just want to do what they want. And so the world is what it is. It's made up of all kinds of people, but we all have to get along enough to not kill each other. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. After November, we all might be dead.
I don't know.
But no, you're absolutely right. And I think that if you are very religious, I think that you should have an open mind and think of different things, because it's a bigger world than just looking through this tube.
Yeah.
You need to open your eyes to see the whole picture.
One of the things that really brought me out of like heavy duty religion perspective, because my husband was kind of shocked. He actually predicted me going religious by my chart, by my astrology. He said, "You're going to have like a big spiritual awakening." I said, "Oh, I have those all the time." And he goes, "No, like something big." And then I went Catholic, and he was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know this was going to happen. And what do we do now? Are we going to stay married? What's going to happen?" And it was rough there. So I think that, people go through changes, and the world we all go through these cycles, right? And one of the things that brought me kind of into being open-minded again was Tartaria research, and the idea that we've had previous resets and we've had our history hidden from us by the controllers, and that kind of information to me is such a game changer in this field.
Do you mean like do you mean like past high civilizations like Atlantis, for instance, and then
even more recent though? Yeah, even more recent. Like there's suspicious things that happened in the 1800s and early 1900s that make me think there was some kind of a cataclysm that recent that was hidden from us. Yeah, like why did we have so many orphanages and insane asylums in the 1800s? Why were all these orphans everywhere? They were shipping them all over the place. They had all these huge, giant castle-like orphanages and insane asylums all over America and Europe.
Well, people just didn't understand
how nowhere. Like, who built those? Yeah. And what were all these buildings really for? And what about the World's Fairs and all? Like all that stuff. It's such a rabbit hole. I love it.
Right, and people didn't understand this, like the Catholics doing exorcisms. Now they understand that if someone was schizophrenic. But back then they didn't know.
Yeah, but back then there are things that could have happened, and whoever didn't go with the new programming might have been institutionalized. That's what I think.
That's true as well. Yeah.
So this almost feels synchronistic to me. Just last night I was listening to I don't know if you ever heard of Mary Seal, who's a mind control expert, and she used the term, "We're living in a psycho-civilized, mind-controlled society." To an extent that is way beyond what we could possibly imagine in terms of how all of our beliefs and perceptions and thoughts and ideas about the world are all programmed, to some degree. I almost feel like that feels slightly.
That feels right. It does. It feels like a holographic universe of different cycles with different narratives, different controllers. And that, even the church, like as much as I love the church, most things about it, I look at the buildings differently, the cathedrals, and I go, were those really originally churches, or were they healing centers? Were they machines? Were those buildings free energy device machines that program the water with frequencies? And how did they do that architecture? And why do they have sacred geometry and everything? And what's really with these buildings?
That's right.
Especially that, and
we don't know.
Yeah, and then you look at the stories and you like, who put together these stories? And even when I went religious, I knew I was submitting to a mind control system. I said, I'm going to be mind controlled just being alive on the planet by something, right? The TV, the weather, or something. Everything is mind control. I said, I'm just going to pick one that's really nice and beautiful and makes me feel happy. But I knew that, even going to mass, it's so beautiful, but it's all this repetition and ritual, and it's very intoxicating and calming. And I'm like, I know that I'm being like, ritualized.
It's the ritual.
It's like, I chose this one, So the world is a mystery, and there are many things going on to shape our minds. Yeah,
way more than we think, and I think we need to
free our minds.
Start uncovering all this collectively, for sure. Let's pivot back to the reasons. There was another thing I wanted to mention as a possible reason. It was a possible explanation also for the MyLab abductions, because one of the things that's just really fairly common with abductees is that, you know, they're getting abducted by black ops simultaneously with the ET abductions. And why is that the case? You know, why are they?
What I hear. Are you asking me? Or are you about to tell me?
Well, well, I mean, if you have any answers too, it was rhetorically. I have some thoughts.
Camille, tell me.
I wanted to hear what you think first, and then I'll chime in with what, if anything's missing from that, because it's probably the same thing I'm thinking.
Well, so I mean, one of the reasons is potentially is that, and this is maybe evinced by your out-of-body experience type regression that you had with Maryland, the last one that you talked about, how you were sort of coming into the planet, you know, with some kind of, and I believe you left out a detail also. You were told at that time, I think, by these beings that you were here to fight evil or something along those lines, and that there was, in essence, a mission. You know, you were coming here. It was mission based. The reason why, yeah, and that is, frankly, you know, one of the maybe obvious reasons why they have an interest in you, because perhaps from their perspective, I mean, you are like an enemy agent. You know, you're another civilization. You're some soul entity, you know, from another civilization who's coming here, and they know this. They know that, you know, that non-native souls, extraterrestrial souls are moving onto the planet, you know, in great numbers. And they've got this control system going that's been going for a long time now that they're fairly invested in. And they want to know what's going on, and they want to know why you're here potentially, and what this race potentially, if that's what it is, you know, the group, you know, that you belong to, what they're up to and what they're doing. And maybe they're regressing you. Maybe in some of these MyLab abductions, they are combing through your memories to find out what you know, what's going on, what your intentions are, what your objectives are, and maybe also what you know, what knowledge you have, or what information potentially, you know, in terms of past lifetimes that you may have had at other places. What secrets might be unveiled through, you know, capturing a person like this, you know, regressing them, going back lifetimes, and finding out things. Who knows? Things maybe relating to technological secrets that they want. You know, if you are a kind of starseed type soul like that's non-native, you know, that's just come here recently from elsewhere. Yeah, I would just put that on the table as one, you know, potential reason for MyLab abductions, is that you're a target of interest because you have an agenda that runs counter to their control system.
Wow, I've never heard it put that way. I never thought of it of myself being a starseed potential enemy of theirs in some way. I always thought of it just on the level of abductee, like they pick up abductees to find out intel on what the aliens are telling them or showing them, or if they've activated any psychic abilities or abilities to interact with the technology, like who can fly these things. That, like, I've heard of that as the reason that abductees get interrogated by them.
Yeah, that's another
teach you or show you, what do you know? I never thought about it from the perspective of me not being fully human, because I feel so human. But then I had that experience, which was so beyond human. So I still don't walk around every day thinking of myself as a not human. I don't go around saying I'm a starseed, actually, even though technically by what I just described, I guess I am. I'm a little bit cautious of the, even though I had this love and light thing, I'm a little cautious about the love and light.
Yeah.
it's hard for me to do that.
I don't think it's a good label to attach to, even though I think it's quite, I think it's a real phenomenon. I think that way more, we know just statistically, the number of humans that have been on the planet, throughout the majority of its history have been, a really small amount, in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Now there's billions of people on the planet. Where are these souls coming from? And I don't believe for a second, that they have all been birthed, into existence, at the beginning of this lifetime. I do think that what we are. We didn't lose it, did we? We didn't lose audio, did we?
I'm here. I dropped out, but I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe my laptop got hot. I don't know what's happening. I was listening to you though. I heard it all.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that I don't like to use the term starseed, and I think that it's attached to a philosophy and body of information that's been really interfered with and contaminated, and is problematic in many ways, and is spiritually problematic in terms of the identification with the label and seeing yourself as different than human, and how that kind of separates you from your humanness and your human family. I think we should view each other, view each other first and foremost as human.
People who feel that more fully and who talk about that more fully. I don't have a very full experience of that except for that encounter. So that's my resistance mostly. But it is very interesting as a MyLab targeting concept. And I don't know. All I know is I'm compelled to talk. I'm compelled to share my story. I am relatively fearless about it, even though that may be stupid in the very, real sense. I just feel like the timing has changed and there is more freedom now. I could be naive, but it just seems like everything is accelerating and I feel safer now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just do. I could be stupid to feel that way, but I do know that my I have had other experiences where I felt externalized from being human. Once when I took mushrooms, for instance, I didn't feel like a human. But only once.
What was there any interesting details to that?
No, it was very interesting because I said I felt like an alien. I was in Idlewild, California, out in nature with my boyfriend, and I was running around the forest, and some humans came down the trail, and I remember saying, "Oh, some humans are coming," something like that. But then I asked God. I'm always challenging, right? Like in that dream with the devil, right? So I asked God when I was on mushrooms. I said, "God, please make yourself known to me. I can handle it." And then all of a sudden, I heard this huge. Like it was like God was playing a gigantic cathedral-sized pipe organ all at once, a giant chord, and just went. Like I heard this incredibly huge pipe organ chord in my head that was just like my head was exploding, and I was cowering in fear. Like, okay, oh my God, oh yeah, that was a bit much. You're right. Like that's enough. Okay, and it was interesting that it was in the form of a giant pipe organ chord playing. And now I'm into Tartaria, and it's all about pipe organs and cathedrals and things. So that was kind of a funny memory, actually. But I really do. I'm enamored of people who are close to God, and I want to be. I read about the mystics and the saints, and I love all that. I love Catholic mysticism. I love it. So I feel kindred with them, and I feel protected. And I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I just feel protected.
I don't think that is naive, and I'm just the whole theme of the last few months of my life has been running into person after person who just have had innumerable experiences throughout their life where they should have died and something extraordinarily weird happened, and literally to the point where they went off of a cliff and didn't smack on the ground and die and floated down. And these are all, people who are unusual sorts of people like yourself,
I had one of those. I had a horse almost killed me. I had horses almost kill me a few times. But once a horse had my head sandwiched between a gate and a wall and was pulling on a rope attached to the gate and was about to squish my head like a watermelon.
Wow.
Oh,
and I pulled my head out of the gate and it slammed, and I had black and blue marks up the sides of my head. But
did you feel anything weird happened in that moment, like time slowing? One of the things that happens.
Slowed down, yeah.
And did slow down. Okay.
I was right next to a graveyard full of nuns.
Oh, wow.
It was at the Academy of the Sacred Heart where I went to school with Salma Hayek. And their stable was right next to the graveyard. And so maybe, I don't know, somebody saved me from that one. When I got confirmed, I took St. Anne as my confirmation saint. She's the patron saint of horses and horse people. So I was like, yeah, thanks for that one. Somebody saved me there. I would have had my head squished in front of all my schoolmates.
Wow.
I seriously think that there's people like you that are mission-based, that have a mission that can't die. Or at least, you might have an exit point, at some point, where, death is, permitted at that point, to disembody, to get out of the human body. But I seriously think that there's people, not that, it's maybe a good thing, to have this idea riding around in your head that you can't die or anything, that might be problematic. But there's people that no matter what happens, if something happens, something will intervene and will stop that from happening.
Well, I do want to talk briefly about this urgency factor Yvonne Smith speaks about, like a lot of abductees feeling like something's imminent, something's about to happen. And I do feel that feeling. I also say, too, that a lot of us abductees are my age or older. And if the aliens knew the future and they were preparing us for this time frame, I think they know timelines, right? And so they wouldn't have prepared a whole generation of people my age. I'm 57. So I'm in an age of authority, right? And they would have waited and brought up another generation of people for this time. I feel like there's a whole bunch of us at this age range that are in place to be useful during disclosure. So I think there is something imminent. Also, I've had recurring dreams of being in like a futuristic military base where the ceiling is glass, and being at a control panel with military types and looking at the sky, and the sky is a grid. It's not a normal looking sky with stars. It's got like a grid interlaced in it. And I remember looking up going, they're coming and the ships are coming. And we see them through this grid work. And so that's a recurring dream I have. I don't know what that is, but yeah, if you've ever heard anything weird like that, let me know.
Yeah,
I haven't heard one about the grid. I mean, I have heard sort of similar dreams as that. Yeah. Do you also have apocalyptic dreams as well?
I have tornado and volcano and tidal wave dreams, but I don't have nuclear war dreams.
So I've had all of them. I've had nuclear war dreams also, but you know what? I don't get them anymore at all. I just never. It's just like they've totally stopped. Throughout like the 2010s, 2013, 2014, 2015 years, I got a lot of dreams like that. And now it's just like the amount of dreams like that has just suddenly dropped off a cliff.
Yeah. For
me, I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that too, like the cessation of these kinds of.
I hope. I don't know, but I mean, I feel like there's a cataclysm cycle coming, but it's not man-made. This whole climate change being man-made is I think not really what's happening. I think it's a cyclical thing they know about that happens, and they're going to navigate it the best they can, but blaming it on humans and trying to curtail our freedoms over it is not going to help anything.
Yeah.
But could it though be that we are? Could it be that we are helping the climate go into this? Like, I understand that we had ice ages, things like that. I understand that, but is it possible that humans could be accelerating this a little a little bit, maybe because of different chemicals and things like that.
I don't know. When you weigh it with all the volcanoes exploding, it's nothing. And when you look at things like higher CO2 just causes more plant growth. And is that a bad thing? And like,
no, and I understand that.
Are cow farts really competing with volcanoes? I don't think so. So
yeah,
all the stuff that I don't like, the WEF and all the globalists that want us to eat bugs and take away meat and
right
15-minute cities. So I'm very much against tyranny and all that, and I will fight that like hell.
Absolutely.
So I'm one of those. I will push back on all the tyranny till the day I die.
And I'm just throwing this out there. I'm just curious: is carbon causing the ozone layer to thin out, or what I mean? Is there could be something. I don't think it's near as bad as they say, but I do think that there is probably something that humans have caused over our time of industrialization from the 1800s, when you do
that was a very dirty time, and we do have pollution capture systems that are way better now and all that, obviously. But I mean, I'm not saying
we do have environmental crises. I think we have real environmental crises that are.
I think the crises though is not as anthropomorphic as they let it. I think it's being used as a globalist power grab. I don't think that the things they're saying we should implement would do anything. I think it's going to happen regardless, and I think it's just a power grab. But that's me. That's those are the scientists I listen to and the political view I listen to.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Argue about things like that, but we'll see, won't we? We'll see.
Yeah.
Also, the measures. I mean, we're running on almost 2 hours. The measures that they're recommending, to remedy, these climate issues, are the very things that facilitate and support the agenda, the authoritarian agenda, that they want to roll out. So, I find that extremely suspect. I mean, I think it's so obvious, actually. If you have any understanding of the agenda that's going on, I mean,
it's a depopulation agenda, among other things. So that I'm all up in arms about. I'm not pro depopulation. I'm pro human, and if we get alien help, fine. But I'm not an anti-humanist or depopulationist like a lot of people are right now.
Yes. And I've heard from a lot of different abductees. They get these messages of taking care of the earth, and you know what I mean. So that's why I was just throwing out there: is there something that we could do?
But the things that aliens say is, don't destroy the earth. But then they're very vague about what the solutions are. Well, the solutions aren't electric car batteries and windmills. That's not good enough. If you want to really help us, give us something that's real, that's helpful.
Yes.
Not having child labor digging rare earth minerals and when you plug in your car, it has to come from fossil fuel anyway. Like that doesn't help anything. That just makes a bunch of battery waste and cars that blow up. So it's not like that. Like. I'm all for solutions, but the solutions are not They're not good enough. Okay. So if the aliens want to really come in with the free energy and all that, then bring it, but they're not. They're just saying, don't hurt the earth. And it's like,
right.
Okay. Can you give us more?
Exactly.
Really,
and that's true.
If it's that serious, then can you give us a little more? Like,
and I I've heard from abductees saying about, they were told about if things keep going, we're going to move into a nuclear type of thing, and they don't want to see that, obviously. So it's just like, what can humans do to help with this kind of thing? And I guess that's a show on its own right there.
Yeah, stay loving and keep exposing corruption.
That's right.
That's my motto.
That's right. Jim, you have anything you want to say before we get off of here?
What's the movie? Last thing. What's the? Are you doing some kind of movie about just on this note of fighting corruption, about child slavery or something like that?
Yeah, I am cast. Yeah. Currently, I'm cast in a show that hasn't shot yet. It's a pilot for a series called Vice Squad. and it's one of these franchise crime show pilot concepts. So there would be Vice Squad in different cities, right? So I'm in the Vice Squad LA version, cast as an assistant district attorney. So that's on my IMDb page if you want to go look at it. I hope it actually gets made. And it is about fighting child trafficking, which is one of my causes. I'm really against human trafficking and all that goes with it, the organ harvesting and the ritual sacrifice and all of the pedos, all that is just, outrageous. So that would be great to be in that. And but then, I just I'm in a show called Alien Disclosure Files on Amazon. I'm in the last episode. I'm interviewed in that. I'm in an upcoming documentary by Caroline Corey it's called Closure with Caroline Corey, and it's about abductees that have unresolved trauma issues. And I had a very interesting experience working with her on camera. That should be in that show. It's been delayed. I don't know when it's coming out, but I do documentaries. I do like to do interviews and podcasts and things. And I've been doing them since the mid 90s. I just took that break and went religious for a while. So I'm here to be useful and throw in my hat to the ring and see where this all takes us. And I love the camaraderie. I love going to conferences. I love meeting other people. I love being in various support groups and, hashing it out and hearing each other's stories. It's so fascinating to me.
Yes. And I think that's, I can't speak for Jim, but I know for me, this podcast is so very positive because I love to talk to people like you to get your story, your thoughts, your opinions. That's how we help spread awareness as well.
Thank you.
So it's just incredible. If people want to look you up, where do they got to go?
Well, I'm on social media. They can go to my website, which is just my name, Camille James Harman, spelled HARMAN.com, CamilleJamesHarman.com. And then all my other social media links are on there. And also you could directly email me through that website. And I'm on a lot of interviews on YouTube and a couple of documentaries. And, if you poke around, you'll see me here and there telling my story. So here we go.
And you do have your IMDb.
I have an IMDb page. You can go on there and look at my acting projects. And my UFO projects are on there too, some of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Some of them. And Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is very exciting. It's where Hollywood people and UFO people get together and make projects that include the real stories from the real people. And we also, promote things like we had a press conference for the Peruvian mummies here in Los Angeles, and Jaime Maussan flew in, and we were part of the sponsors of that. So, and we co-sponsored Contact in the Desert conference. And so, Daniel Harari, who started the group with Steve Bassett, Daniel is a publicist, and so he's really good at publicizing Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. So it's great. There's some really big names in there, like Shirley MacLaine. So it's very
nice.
Cool.
Now, do you have articles and things on the Hollywood Disclosure?
There are articles. Yeah, if you go to the HollywoodDisclosure.org, I believe, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, I believe. I hope it's not .com. It should be .org. You'll see all of the people on there and read little bios about us. And they do have articles. They've been featured in Deadline. They were featured on the local news here in LA. They did a story on them. They did a story on Contact in the Desert too. So yeah, Dan gets us a lot of press. Just look it up online, Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.
Yes. I think it's a really good thing that what you're doing. I had a wonderful time talking to you. I could talk forever about this kind of stuff. You're a very interesting person. So,
you guys are so knowledgeable, and thank you for all those provocative talking points.
Well, that's what we want to do. We want to dive deep. We want to, spark up some memories that you might not have talked about for a while, and have the audience, because there's always somebody going through something that maybe they hear your story and they go, "Oh my God,
yep, exactly.
I'm not crazy." She's been through the same thing. So yes, that's why we do what we do. We
and I love the comments. I can't wait to read the comments, because then you find people that have something to say that adds to validating what you said, and it's always fun to read the comments after these interviews.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much, Camille, for being on here. I had a wonderful time. Jim, thank you again. If there's anything else you want to say, just hang tight and we'll talk behind the scenes here. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching, listening, joining in, all that good stuff. We hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.